imagine seeing that in your neighborhood. These were terrifying moments recorded on video after 2 Russian fighter jets flew over the suburbs near Kyiv. Footage from a resident leaning out of a window shows the planes flying low enough that you can hear it there, the neighborhood just west of the capital city. The loud explosion followed shortly after, damaging part of an apartment building.
And this was the scene here as Russian troops entered a strategic Ukrainian port city in Kherson today, making it the first major city to fall to Putin's forces in this 8-day-long invasion so far. You're looking at video from an apartment window, and you can see there Russian armored vehicles and soldiers on the streets there. We want to go back out live to Ukraine right now. Our correspondent Chuck Holton with more. And Chuck, it's incredible. We're seeing these images. Have you heard some of these flyovers from where you are?
That's right. Yes, we have. We've been hearing more of these jets over the last few days, and you usually can't see them. They go by so fast, but they really strike terror in the hearts of the people here. But even still, with all this added violence, with the Russians stepping up their missile strikes all over the country and aimed at civilian areas to create terror and drive people out of those areas, try to deny that territory to the civilians so that the Russians can more easily come in. What they're seeing is so many times as they try to come into these towns, civilians are standing, literally outstanding in the streets. This has been seen over and over again all over this country. They're standing in the streets blocking the way of the tanks and trucks. And so I think these added attacks and very violent attacks on civilian areas especially are meant to drive people out. But there are signs that the Russian leadership is unhappy with the progress of the war. Documents captured in the last couple days in a command vehicle, a Russian vehicle, show that the battle plans for this invasion were actually signed on January 18th by Vladimir Putin, and that he expected this to be a 15-day war and they would be done. So they're already 8 days in, and they've only control less than 20% of this country, and so things are obviously not going to plan.
Well, Chuck, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov says Russia has no intention of nuclear war, but Moscow is prepared to press on with its invasion until, quote unquote, the end. We're also seeing Vladimir Putin on Russian television right now. He feels the need to say that things are going according to plan. So that would back up what you're saying. You know, this is the propaganda that Vladimir Putin needs to push out. He's also saying that the way the fighting is going in Ukraine, it shows that they are fighting neo-Nazis. So that has been his message throughout. But it doesn't seem like it's resonating totally with the people of Russia.
No, certainly not resonating with the people of Russia, especially as the economic sanctions start to bite. They are, I mean, everything from Apple computers refusing to sell there, now Microsoft, Intel, IKEA shut down in Russia. We saw footage today of a rush on the IKEA store to buy what was left there. They said there wouldn't even be a napkin left in that store once it was over. The Russian people are really going to hurt because of Vladimir Putin's choices here, but not nearly as much as the Ukrainian people, and that's what's really important to focus on right now. Today we have seen a tremendous number of people leaving the country, another wave of migrants that could reach as much as 10% of the population of this country over the coming 2 weeks.
Now, your point is well taken, Chuck. Of course, Putin is the one inflicting all this pain on the Ukrainian people, but also, in effect, on his own people as well, the limits to which are not infinite. Chuck, great to see you. Great reporting, too, as well. All right, joining us now to discuss this in more detail is Army combat veteran and Florida congressional candidate Cory Mills. Also with us, former Naval Intelligence Officer John Jordan. Gentlemen, great to have you with us.
Good to be here.
Thanks so much, John.
First to you, John, I wanted to ask you what Chuck was just saying there. You know, they're gathering some intelligence, and it shows the Russian commanders on the ground are not happy with the progress here. We've heard about these reports. Give us your analysis on where things stand right now and how poorly this is going for Vladimir Putin's invaders.
Well, certainly in the north, we have the 40-mile, what I call the horde of the unwilling that doesn't seem to be making any progress. Key to understanding this is that the Russian army is a conscript army. They're in and out of the army in 2 years. And it's not the best and brightest of Russian society either, because the elites and people that are educated always try to get out of Russia, their military service. And the Russian army historically has always taken very poor care of their soldiers. More than half of their casualties in Afghanistan actually were due to Civil War type diseases like typhus and coming from lack of sanitation. So here they are in a 40-mile long traffic jam. They can't be happy. Their junior officers and their field grade officers have to be getting it. There has to be some tension between there and the Ministry of Defense in Moscow about why this isn't moving faster, why the supplies aren't flowing. And this is only going to get worse. And I'd be interested to hear what Cory has to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, the morale obviously comes into play with this. And Cory, you're a combat veteran. We got reports today that Ukrainians were building these anti-tank obstacles. They're called hedgehogs, to try and stop those Russian forces from entering, or at least attempting to slow them down. And these are guys who say, we know how to build things, we don't know how to shoot, but we're going to do whatever we can. We're going to take this metal, we're going to throw spears. So obviously we hear that those people are still continuing to battle on here. Could these hedgehogs really make a dent, though?
Well, again, I think that more than anything, the Ukrainian volunteers, as well as for foreign fighters in the Ukrainian army themselves, are just intending to slow or bog down Russia's movement. I think Russia, though, is going to face some very difficult logistics and supply chain issues. When you talk about 40 miles of tanks and APCs and all these other things, you're talking about a massive amount of supply chain which is required with regards to maintenance supplies, extra track, extra vehicles, medical supplies, cash forward support hospitals. So I think that they really didn't predict that there would be as much resistance as what they saw. Now, bear in mind, I was in Ukraine in 2015. I was actually working with and talking to the Dnipro battalion there, which was a battalion based out of Dnipropetrovsk, who was supporting the fights in Donetsk, as well as for trying to prevent them against Lugansk. And so I think that, the Russians, did mispredict exactly what it would take to take a nation like Ukraine, which is prepared to fight and prepared to die for their country.
Yeah, Cory, and I just want to mention real quickly that you have a article up on Newsmax.com right now, an opinion piece that everyone should check out. It talks about how President Biden's weakness brought 2,000 Russians to our southern border. Real quickly, just expand on that a little bit and what you're writing about.
Well, again, I'm essentially talking about the porous borders and the fact that both President Biden and Kamala Harris are so focused on a border 9,000 miles away, while our border, right here in America is being violated. We have over 160 different nations who are flooding across our borders. We have over 2 million plus illegals who've come into our country, not to mention the fact that the leading killer right now of adults 18 to 45 is fentanyl overdose. So we've got over 100,000, which is far surpassing COVID and all the rest of the things. So, we need to be thinking about the fact that there could be spider cells and intel cells that are being formed here in America. We've got to think about the fact that under President Trump, we had to actually close consulates in areas like Houston because China was continuing to launch espionage against us. But what we really need to be paying attention to more than anything is the fact that there is a Russian-China alliance. There is a great superpower resurgence which is going on, where Russia plays the kinetic element of things while China plays this more resource economic cyber warfare case. And again, Russia is doing what they're doing right now, and you've already talked about their coordination with China, because they have to expand the Eurasian border. In order to expand the Eurasian border, you have to take Ukraine, you have to take others, but not violate NATO nations that would enact the Article 5. So this is the Eurasia, Africa, Oceania takeover, which allows China to create their One Road, One Belt initiative, essentially controlling dominance in supply chain.
It is a scary scenario when you think about those two getting together, but obviously a lot of complications there. Gentlemen, we're out of time for this segment, unfortunately. Cory, we got to let you run, but we're going to have John back in the next hour to continue the conversation. Gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.